There's a report going around that the Big Ten is eyeing some more teams from the Pac-12. Now, they already got USC and UCLA on the way. Now they're eyeing Washington, Oregon, Cal, and Stanford, according to Yahoo Sports. And if they end up getting these 4 teams, it pretty much is going to be the end of the Pac-12 conference. And I kind of already feel like it's the end for the Pac-12 conference with them recently losing Colorado and Arizona, probably the next thing cooking out of there. I think the Pac-12 is all but finished. And if the Big Ten ends up taking these 4 teams out the conference, this would be the dagger to the Pac-12. And they don't have a new media rights deal still. They are negotiating something with Apple around $20-something million, but a lot of teams aren't satisfied with that when you look at what other schools are making in the SEC and the Big 12 and then the Big 10. And for the Pac-12, their commissioner, he's in a really tough situation because the situation that this conference finds themselves in, about pretty much on the brink of extinction, isn't due to him mostly. It's mostly due to the previous Pac-12 commissioner being inept at really running his job effectively. And you look at the fact that, these Pac-12 schools, they want more money. That's really what it's about. It's about revenue. And although a lot of you guys who are Pac-12 truthers and you're like, man, like, we can still save this conference, bringing in Boise and San Diego State. Those schools are not going to save the Pac-12 if these 4 schools end up leaving for the Big Ten. Washington, Oregon, I'm pretty confident, and most of us who are looking at this situation logically are pretty sold on the fact that Oregon and Washington are going to leave the Pac-12. It's not a matter of if, but I think it's just a matter of when, if the right opportunity presents itself. And the Big Ten getting Washington and Oregon would be huge additions to that conference. They already have extended themselves into the West Coast market with adding UCLA and USC. Why not continue to expand into that West Coast market by adding Washington and Oregon? And Washington has a pretty big media market. And Oregon, I don't know how big their media market is per se, but they do got a really big fan base. And I do think that Oregon football does generate very good ratings. People love watching Oregon. Either you're a fan of Oregon or you love watching them play because either you're a diehard college football fan or you just love seeing their jerseys and all the 100 million jersey combinations they got. And Oregon and Washington have been 2 of the best programs in the Pac-12 conference for over the last couple of years. USC, you got to remember, they haven't really been that consistent. They had some good years, but they've also had a couple of down years. So Oregon and Washington, although both those schools have had their downs, they've probably been the most consistent programs in the Pac-12 for the last couple of years. So you're getting 2 squads that right now are in a really good position with where they lie with their current head coaching situations. Kalen DeBoer, you look at Dan Lanning, both had a lot of success year 1, and they got promising futures with their respective programs, with how well they are recruiting, how well they're utilizing the transfer portal. And I think that Washington and Oregon would make things really interesting in the Big Ten. Because the Big Ten is a conference that has great teams like Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, but I don't really think they have as much depth as the SEC does. And adding schools like Oregon and Washington bring you more depth. Now you're going to have 2 more teams that are going to be capable of being able to compete for a championship and being able to get up with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. If you don't think that USC is going to be able to succeed in the Big Ten, you should at least think that Oregon is going to have a chance at being able to have success in this conference because they already beat Ohio State before. Washington is also a school that has had success against the Big Ten. And we seem to forget that Oregon and Washington have been to the college football playoffs. So these aren't schools that oh, they wouldn't succeed in the Big Ten. Okay, have that mindset if you want to, if you're a Big Ten fan. Like, Oregon already smacked Ohio State before, and they can very well do it again if they're given the opportunity. And Washington has a really talented roster, and it's really easy to recruit up there if you got the right head coach. And Kalen DeBoer looks like the right guy there. Now, for the other two schools who are rumored in these reports, Cal and Stanford, why the hell would they want them? Well, Stanford is a really prestigious academic institution. And if you're the Big Ten, adding Stanford to your conference, even if they don't really bring anything from a football standpoint, they're going to make you a more respectable conference when it comes to academics. Stanford is like the college football equivalent to Harvard, pretty much, in terms of FBS. Do you know how many smart people go to Stanford? I got a homie that goes to Stanford. Really smart. He had a 4.2 GPA throughout high school. So Stanford is a really good institution when it comes to academics. From a football standpoint, judging from what they look like right now and what they looked like last season, they probably are going to be competing with Northwestern for the title of being the worst program in the Big Ten. And I know it sounds messed up. I didn't mean to say it like that, but it's kind of the truth. In the NIL and transfer portal era, it kind of isn't voting well for Stanford. They're not a school that can just get anybody out the transfer portal because guys have to be admitted into their university based on their academics, not just based on what they do on the football field. And you look at the fact that they don't really recruit all that well, even though they are in a good location for recruiting, it's not the easiest to recruit at Stanford due to the same situation that they have with the transfer portal. You can't just accept any recruit. Recruits have to meet a certain academic criteria, and these criteria are often pretty high and pretty lofty. So Stanford, I think they more just bring value to the conference from an academic standpoint, more from an athletic standpoint. I don't even think their basketball team is good. And Cal, I think they're a pretty prestigious academic institution as well. So adding Stanford and Cal would boost the academic resume of the Big Ten. And maybe Cal, they could get things going because they are in the state of Cali. So from a geographic standpoint, it allows the Big Ten to tap into that West Coast Cali market even further with adding USC and UCLA. And then you add Cal, you're pretty much gotten the whole state of Cali pretty much when it comes to college football in terms of the biggest teams in that state. So the Big Ten is eyeing 4 Pac-12 teams. This doesn't look good for the Pac-12. Most likely, Oregon and Washington are on their way out. If they don't leave for the Big Ten, I'm pretty confident they're going to the Big 12. The Big 12, I think, would gladly accept Oregon and Washington with open arms. And the Big Ten, also according to these reports, is discussing expanding to 18 to 20 teams. And you guys already know how it goes with this conference realignment stuff. One conference adds a couple of teams, another conference has to step in and add some more teams to keep it going. And the Pac-12, like I said earlier, there's nothing that they can really do to stay alive if this goes down. Bringing in SMU, Boise, San Diego State, I mean, it brings in more teams to your conference, but that's just about it. I mean, you're adding more numbers, but you're not really adding a lot of quality. You're not really adding teams that are going to make people want to tune into the Pac-12. And they're already struggling to negotiate a fair media rights deal on the level that these other conferences are, the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the SEC. So what makes anybody think that they're going to be able to get a respectable media rights deal if they lose Oregon and Washington and replace them with SMU and Boise? Come on, man. They're going to lose revenue dollars. It's going to make the conference look even worse. And losing Oregon and Washington would essentially make the Pac-12 a G5 conference. Honestly, now they do got Oregon State and Washington State, who I love. But those two schools, even though they are programs that are on the rise, I don't really think that those are schools that are going to be marketable when you're trying to get a media rights deal for the same amount of dollars that the Big Ten, SEC, and Big 12 have. If anything, you'll be lucky to even get more than $2 million per school, with just Oregon State and Washington State being your two front-running teams. So the Big Ten has their eyes on taking 4 more teams out of the Pac-12 and pretty much putting the dagger into what already is a conference that's starting to die out. You ever play Mortal Kombat and you know when you get your opposing opponent to low health and you got the ability to use your finisher and they say, finish him? That's what the Big 12 is looking at the Pac-12 right now is saying. They're pretty much saying, finish them. And that's pretty much what the Big Ten is probably going to do. Like I said, I don't think it's a matter of if, but a matter of when Oregon and Washington leave the Pac-12 conference. And the Big Ten, I think the only thing that's holding this back from happening is just that the Big Ten, they're not ready yet to add more teams. But I'm pretty sure today, right now, if the Big Ten was to go up to Eugene, Oregon, or go up to Washington and say, hey, like, you guys are free to join us whenever you want to, I'm pretty sure Oregon and Washington hit that door just like that.